Okay, let's begin. Welcome. I'm Rick Dacre, and thank you all for attending. This is our recruitment workshop titled Stop Making Bad Hires, Recruit Only Stars. Over the next 60 minutes, we'll discuss what you should include in your recruitment program and how you do it. After the session, you should all feel free to contact me with any questions you may have. All my contact information you can see right there on this first slide here, my phone number, email. So don't hesitate. Pick up the phone. Don't hesitate to send me an email. When we talk about recruitment, it all really begins here. Your success is dependent on surrounding yourself with good people, and that's usually where we have our problems and usually where we have our successes. So what we want to do this afternoon is really talk about what are the things we need to do to establish a recruitment program that generates quality.
All attendees are muted and may unmute themselves by pressing *6.
Candidates. And so that's what we want to do. I just got a message from the recorder here, so that's what my hesitation was. So we really want to focus on making sure that you get good quality candidates. So what we want to do is, or what you want to do, is to focus on development and recruitment program. It can't be a passive program. Recruitment can only be done when you have ongoing basis. In other words, it can't be just when you have openings. Recruitment is ongoing, always recruiting. Now, you may not be placing ads, and we'll be talking about that, but you have to have a presence. So you in your company need to have a presence that draws people, the right people to you. You can't be the best kept secret in town. People need to be aware of you as an organization. Not everybody, but just the people that you would frankly want to draw into your organization. So if you're a human service agency that hires an awful lot of clinicians, clinicians need to know about you. If you're a manufacturing firm, manufacturing employees, engineers need to know about you. And you need to differentiate yourself. You can't be like everyone else. There's got to be something different. You've got to be able to answer the question, why would anybody want to work for you? We'll get into that in a second when we talk about branding. And you've got to be known as a good place to work. If you're not, if you've got some problems, and a lot of us have problems, and you just simply got to fix it. I mean, I don't want to simplify it, but that's the reality of the situation. The recognition must be that you're a great place to work. And that's why a lot of companies work very hard on great place to work efforts. And that's something that's got to be part of your everyday recruitment process. And recruitment must be personalized. You need to speak to the individual candidates. Ads that just go out to the masses don't work. You need to appeal to the individuals. And we'll talk a little bit about how to do that as we move on. In the past, when we recruited, we'd put a newspaper ad, or we'd get on the big boards like Monster, and we'd post our ads, and we'd pray that people would come in. There was a whole post and pray concept. The message was very general. We did that. We waited, and we hoped that the phone rang, the email came through with a resume, or somebody walked through the door. Can't do that anymore. Any advertising you do needs to be targeted to the very specific people you are looking for. Your message must be personalized and very authentic so that they see that you are who you are and what you want. It can't be one-sided in terms of this is what I want. It's got to be more like this is what I'm offering you. Focus has got to be on that individual. It is relationship recruitment. And that's the key. You need to develop a relationship with your prospective candidates. So you need to know who they are before you need them. So we'll talk about that as we go on in the session today. So think about developing a relationship with candidates and those individuals who can refer candidates to you. I am right now recruiting for a CEO of an organization. It's a public utility. All of my candidates are coming to me through a relationship that I've created over the years with people in that particular industry, so that I'm either reaching out directly to those candidates or potential candidates, or to individuals who know of individuals who could refer to me. But what you could be doing is reaching out to the schools, to the community colleges, to military groups, to professional associations. Wherever your candidates come from is where you should be developing relationships. And we're going to look at how to determine where your candidates come from. Now, many of you have seen this, particularly those who have read my book on complicating management. I talked about these 7 principles when I wrote the book. And what I want to talk about this afternoon is really an update of these principles. How do you develop a recruitment brand? And everyone has a recruitment brand, but you want to make sure yours is a positive one. You want to profile your ideal candidate. Now, your profiles will be different for each particular position, so there is some general about all of it. And your profile is very different from a job description. You need to know where those candidates are, and then when you get them in front of you, you've got to be able to interview them correctly, asking the right questions. So at the end of the process, you know who you've just spoken to and everything about them. Watch for the temptation to hire too quickly. That's where a lot of trouble comes into play. You need to check references, and it's not acceptable to say people won't give me anything beyond name, rank, and serial number. We'll show you how to get some of that information. And then critically evaluate your candidates. So we want you to, if you put these 7 principles in place, you'll enjoy success in your recruitment. So let's talk a little bit about why you need to do this. This is the rationale for spending the time and the money to develop the program, to get better quality of hires. You never want to settle on hires. Too many of us take warm bodies, and that's when you get into a lot of trouble. You want to reduce your cost of recruitment. You should be regularly measuring what it's costing you to make hires. You'll be surprised at that cost. And it isn't just the cost of placing an ad. It's the time that you take in interviewing, the time in scheduling, the time in training that new person, the time you put into onboarding. All of those numbers add up. And that's why turnover is such an expensive process, because now you all of a sudden got to replace those. You want to make sure you're getting quantity and quality of candidates. You want to find the right one, and that's pretty important. So it's more important to get quality candidates than it is to get a lot of candidates. So don't measure your success by how many resumes come in. I'll often have, when I do a lot of executive recruitment, the clients will say, how many resumes did you get? And they're hoping I'm going to say 100. But the reality of it is we want to get fewer resumes but better resumes. We want fewer applicants but better applicants. We want to have a high retention of our new hires. You should be measuring them. You don't want to get into the eating of your young, and I see that commonly in organizations. It's like the new candidate has got to be able to prove themselves, so they go through a hazing ritual process, and if they survive, they're one of us. And I've seen that in many, many organizations. If that's happening with you, you've got to eradicate that. So when you're measuring turnover, take a look at where your turnover is occurring. Because if you're turning them over in the first 60, 90 days, it's a reflection of your recruitment and onboarding process. Now, we're not going to be talking about onboarding today, but that's a critical part of your recruitment process. You want to take a look at the acceptance of offers. You need to get more yeses than no. You should be hitting at least at a 90% hit rate on your offers. And what I'm seeing out there, particularly in the market, as the market continues to heat up, is candidates are getting counter offers. They're getting competitive offers. So you're not the only show in town. So you've got to be aware of the possibility that they're going to get a counteroffer from their current employee, or that they may be interviewing elsewhere. And including, once they're on board, they're not yours yet. because their job search process often continues well beyond their acceptance of your offer, because resumes are out there, and all of a sudden employers start calling. And frankly, if they're really good candidates, employers are out there after them. You need to improve the reputation you have in your community. And your community could be the town you're in, or it could be the community, could be the industry segment you're in, a manufacturing community, a human service community. So there are various communities that you're in. Your reputation is important. You've got to be seen as an employer that somebody wants to work for. A good recruitment brand and effort will also solidify your own employees with a sense of pride. Your own employees are also your best recruiters, and we're going to be talking about referral programs in a minute, but your own employees should be a big part of your recruitment effort. Now, I know a lot of you are HR people that are listening in on today's session, but I'm a firm believer that all your employees are your recruiters, not just the HR. It isn't an HR function per se. And again, we've talked about the staff retention as an important place. It's so much cheaper to recruit when you don't have to replace people. So your number one recruitment tool should be retention of your existing employees. There's nothing more frustrating than spending a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of money on developing a recruitment program, and they're just going out the back door. So you've got to be able to put your thumb in the dike there, preventing that from happening. Some of the challenges that we're facing out there is there are a skill shortage. And I don't have to tell you, and it's more than just the STEM shortage that we're talking about. There is a real deficiency of quality candidates out there, and so that's one of our problems. We have an aging workforce. Boomers are retiring, but there's another issue that we have to deal with, and that is many boomers are not retiring. And so that's not necessarily a problem. You're saying, well, I'm not losing them. That's great. It now is a workforce that's made up of young and old, and that creates other obstacles that you need to be able to work with. So it's a big part of the issue when you're recruiting. Unemployment is down to 5%, and it's dropping. And so that creates another problem for you. Everyone seems to be competing for the same limited talent. This whole war on talent is back. I'm seeing a significant shortage, and you're probably feeling it, with IT, with nursing, with engineering, within manufacturing. Fewer people are entering, like public utilities. We've got some public power people listening in today. Fewer people are entering there. Fewer people are entering the municipal profession. And so all of these areas are not only people retiring out, but fewer people are entering in. And so that's a real issue that you have to deal with. Manpower Group did a survey, and they said, and what they found was in the first quarter of 2016, the one we're in, will probably be the strongest from a recruitment standpoint since 2007. So that was before the recession. So we're off to the races, folks. DICE, which is a technology job board, the IT folks know them, survey found that 71% of the companies are planning to hire in the first quarter. So you are competing with a lot of people out there, and so this is an important. It's important that you have a good, strong recruitment program. SHRM, Society of Human Resource Management, came up with this survey, and these they found to be the toughest jobs to fill in 2016. I've got some as I said, some public power people in here. Electrical engineer is number 2, and I don't have to tell them that. They're feeling it. But IT is in there. Also, nurses are in there. Also, medical professionals are in there. So those are the tough ones to fill in 2016. And the surveys are also showing, and I'm seeing it with my clients, that the time it takes to fill positions is getting much longer. You should measure how long it takes you to fill. And candidates are receiving counteroffers and competitive offers. So the job ahead of you is a difficult one, not insurmountable, but still nevertheless difficult. So let's look at those 7 principles that I just discussed with you, and we'll go into them in detail. A recruitment brand, everyone has one, but think of it as a magnet that draws candidates to you. If your recruitment is negative, think about your physics class, you can reverse the polarity and you will repel candidates from you if you have a negative brand. So we want to take a look at your brand that you have. And what it is the message about what it's like to work for your company. And there are ways that we want to be able to convey our brand to people on the outside so they know what it's like to work for you. Candidates want to know that before they say yes. How you do that, and I've actually been on some of your sites who are participants here, have done a nice job, but I'm going to talk about that. It communicates, your brand communicates who you are and what you stand for. I had a video that I was hoping I could share with you, but I couldn't get it to work with the software here. Tom's of Maine, for those of you who know me, I'm here in Kennebunk. And they're a small little, well, actually they're a big company now. But they're a company that gets into health and beauty care items, and they're very much in tune to the environment, and also entrepreneurial spirit in giving back. So they have this, they have clear vision, values, and beliefs within their organization. They have a 1-minute video. You can see it on YouTube. A 1-minute, very powerful video that conveys who they are, their brand. And it's a series of interviews from the founder all the way to employees who are working in the distribution center. And it's cleverly done, and it really conveys the feeling of what it's like to work for Tom's of Maine. For the right people who have that same belief system, that is clearly a magnet that would draw people to them. Your brand creates an image in the mind of the candidate of whether you're a good place to work and what kind of place you are. So as I said, every company has a brand, whether you know it or not. You want to develop a brand that draws people to you. If you have a negative brand, and I've done recruitment for organizations that have had negative brands, not realizing it until I began the process when people were not or were very reluctant to come in. It makes your job as a recruiter that much harder. And yet I've had companies that are probably not in the nicest industries in the world to go to work for, but were considered to be a very positive place to work, and it was easy to recruit for them. Keep in mind also that branding is not public relations. Your customers and your candidates will know whether you are a good place to work or not, and they'll experience it. And so you want to make sure you are. So ask yourself this: why would anybody want to work for you? That's an important question. What makes you attractive or what makes you unattractive? And if you have things that make you unattractive, fix it. If you have things that make you attractive, promote it. What differentiates you from others? Why should I work for you when I could work for somebody else? Those are the questions that you need to answer. You need to understand here's a fancy little term for it, employee value proposition, which basically is this: the balance between the rewards and the benefits that an employee receives for working for you for the effort they put in for their performance. What's their value? Is there any benefit of working for you? So your brand describes the characteristics and the appeal of working for you. And you need to be able to put that in all of your recruitment efforts so that I know if I work for you, I'm going to get these benefits. You're a good place to work. And it needs to reflect the true reality of your organization. In other words, it can't be made up. You can't say I'm a wonderful place where we're a loving group, we hold hands and we sing Kumbaya. That doesn't work. Now, here's 3 companies that have very strong brands. Now, you know them because they're the big boys, as they would say. Whether it's Apple, whether it's Zappos, whether it's Johnson & Johnson, they are that. But you're a smaller company. And so we're going to show you how to create a positive brand without having the budget that these folks have to be able to do that. Now, the benefits of a brand are you can recruit the right people. It gives you a competitive advantage. The brand differentiates you. When I talked about that Tom's of Maine 1-minute video. That video will show individuals what the culture of your organization is, the entrepreneurship that you have, the community service, the team, the environment. People have that. Now, some of you people checking in here from the Bridge of Central Mass are on board. I went on your website. You have a nice video in there on your recruitment page. So it's the Bridge of Central Massachusetts. So for those of you who might want to check their website, they have a nice video. I think it's like 2.5 minutes, where they interviewed an individual about her career, how she came to work there, what are the advantages of working at the Bridge. It's nice, it's warm, it's attractive to people who are in the clinical field that would be of interest to them. So that's the kind of thing you want to have on there to do that. It'll attract people there. It also lowers the turnover in your organization because people understand the benefits of working for you. It creates a sense of pride in your organization. And I want to tell you that video is a very powerful recruitment tool to have. And it only takes an iPhone. You don't have to have a high-level firm coming in to do that. Someone with an iPhone in a scripted area that you want to do can make a very powerful video that can help people understand what's it like to work for you. And again, you need to share your values. You don't want people to shy away from you. Now, your brand will narrow the pool of candidates that will apply to your company, but you will get a better kind of candidate or a better type of individual there. Now, you also need to take a look at the matrices and determine the effectiveness of your brand. And this will tell you how effective your brand is right now. Take a look at your applicant flow. Are you getting good quality people coming through the door? Or are you struggling to get people through the door? What's the conversion rate of job offers to acceptance? Is it high? Is it low? What's it costing you both in dollars and in time to hire somebody? Are you retaining your existing employees? High turnover means negative brand. What's the performance? This is all about, frankly, this is what we're in the business for. What's the performance of your company? Is your company performing well or not so well? And if it's not so well, it's an impact of your brand. Are you getting referrals? Are employees referring people? Are others referring people to your company? Take a look at these 7 matrices and measure them, and that'll give you a good indication of your brand and the effectiveness of your entire recruitment program. So let me move on from there. There's another area that I find most individuals, recruiters, forget, and that's the development of a candidate profile. I believe it is probably one of the most important aspects of your entire recruitment program. So let me get into this. First of all, a candidate profile is more than a job description. It is much more than a job description. Candidate profile, and I'll show you how to make one in a minute, allows you to target, find, and recruit your ideal candidate. Your interview questions, I'm always asked, what questions should I be asking? Your interview questions come right out of the profile because you want to develop questions that really determine, is the individual meeting your profile? And your profile describes your ideal candidate. And that's why I said it's the most important part of the recruitment process, but it's often ignored. If you hire the wrong person, it can destroy your brand and your culture. So the profile goes beyond the job description. With the profile, you can focus your recruitment, and it helps you to understand where your candidates are located. So when you're saying, where do I find these candidates? It helps you measure against your profile when you have a candidate in front of you. And we often fall in love with certain candidates. You have to measure them up against the profile to make sure I've got the right person here. As I said, you can develop your interview questions out of that profile, and you know whether you have the right person or not. So what's in this profile? It gives an overview of the ideal candidate. So you need to spend some time to say, what does my ideal candidate look like? So if I'm looking for a clinician, as an example, what does that ideal candidate look like? And I'm going to get into everything from what kind of education they have to what are the traits of the individual, the best kind of traits, warm, open, transparent, to negative traits, introvert, whatever. What are their professional characteristics? What are the skill sets that are critically important for this individual? What are the skill sets that aren't? We talked about traits, good and bad. We talked a little bit about education. Not, everybody's got to have a PhD, but what's the ideal education? What kind of school do they come from? You need somebody from an Ivy League school or a community college. And it also provides, the profile will provide a description of the company. I've done a lot of executive recruitment in the last year, 18 months, from an association executive director to a police and fire chief and even to a general manager of a utility. In developing the profile with the hiring group is a dynamic process that allows them to really hammer out what are they looking for. There's upfront time in doing that, but it allows you to say, is this person the ideal candidate? Do they have what I really need to be successful in this organization? Or are they just simply satisfied what's on the job description and they're a warm body? Spend the time developing a candidate profile and update it regularly if you hire a lot of those positions to make sure that that profile isn't changing. And frankly, if you have a multi-site organization, the profile of the ideal candidate may be different in each because they also have to be able to reflect the culture of that particular facility. So that's really what's in the profile and what you really need to do that. If you need some help on profiles, let me know. I'd be more than happy to work with you to develop an ideal candidate profile. And again, the profile of your finance director and the profile of your manufacturing manager are going to be different profiles, even though it's the same company. So where are the candidates? Where are you going to find these ideal candidates? Where are they kind of hanging out? And they're not hanging out on Monster.com or Indeed. Where are they? And if they're employed, they're probably not looking, so you're talking about passive candidates. So we want to know, where are those candidates? They could be anywhere. I mean, you could be looking for people that are hanging out at the bingo parlor. I don't know. And incidentally, that was a person, a client of mine, found people for their distribution center at the bingo parlor. That's where they were hanging out, and that's where they recruited. It could be the schools. It could be the associations they belong to. It could be the church they belong to. It could be within your competitors. But you need to know, where are my ideal candidates hanging out? And so when you know where they are, then you can target there. So understanding your profile helps you to know where the candidates are. You can now target your search for them, and you're not blindly buying ads and hoping to find good people. And there are lots of ways of going out there and finding these candidates. But let's talk about one of the group, and that's what I call the passive candidates. And those are the candidates that are not looking for a job. So they won't see your ads. They're usually employed. And you can't get them without going out and reaching out to them. And I got to tell you this. I was telling this to another person today. They were just amazed at me that I said this. But flattery equals a high response rate when you're going after passive candidates. I was talking to a candidate yesterday who told me that he didn't think he wanted to apply for the position. I had reached out to him. He's a passive candidate. And I said, one of the things you should know is that as I was talking to other people, as I was networking, your name came up 2 or 3 times as somebody who would be an ideal candidate. That was a true statement. I didn't make that up to him. And he changed his mind. He said, really? I'm going to have to reconsider that. And the reason he did that is because he didn't think he was qualified for the position. So when you're going after passive candidates, you need to identify them, who they are, and literally reach out to them. Pick up the phone, call them up, meet them someplace, talk to them. So you need to do this all in advance, identifying prospective candidates to go after them. So if you're going after nurses, you need to know who the nurses are out there. If you're going after electrical engineers, you need to be out in the community knowing who the electrical engineers are, who might make good candidates. Or you need to know who can make those referrals. I am recruiting, as I said, a CEO right now of a utility, and I am basing my entire recruitment on the network I have of people that I know, potential candidates, and those people who can refer individuals to me. And it's an effective way to do it. So identify those prospective candidates and go after them. So if you were looking for cooks, as an example, I'd develop a relationship with the culinary schools, and I'd know the instructors, and I'd talk to them, and they would know who the good cooks were in the organizations and in the competition, or who were graduating, and I'd call them. If I was going after electrical engineers that were just getting out of school, I'd develop a relationship with the engineering schools in the programs that they have well before I am looking for those candidates. So you need to identify people who can either refer candidates to them and call them and get names, or going after them. Passive candidates are often your better candidate. I'm not saying they're the best, but they're the better ones, but they are not going to know that you're even looking because they're not looking for a job. So consider passive candidates as part of your overall recruitment process. So let's look at different ways that you can find candidates. Now, I'm a firm believer of making everyone a recruiter. When I develop recruitment programs for my clients, I really stress this point of making everyone a recruiter. So everyone in the organization knows what kind of positions you're looking for. Everyone knows what kind of person is successful in the organization, and they're on the outlook for them. And I develop good employee referral programs. And I know many of you have employee referral programs, or at least considering employee referral programs. I think it is a critical part of your recruitment program. But you've got to make your referral programs lucrative. Very frankly, if you're offering $100 for a referral and they have to jump through fire hoops to get it over a period of months and sometimes years to get paid out, you don't have an effective recruitment referral program. If you're offering significant dollars and you're paying the money up front, watch the candidates flow through the door. I developed a program for an organization, not a wealthy organization. It was a nursing home. And we paid $1,000 on day one. The administrator was nearly in cardiac arrest when I suggested that. But we saw a steady flow of nurses coming through the door as a result of that. When you measure the dollars it cost you for a referral program up against the cost of spending for advertising anyway, you'll find that it is much cheaper and much more effective. Look for candidates where they're not in unlikely places. In other words, they're not on Monster, but they could be at an association meeting. They could be They could be at that bingo parlor. They could be at. They could be anywhere. So you've got to be always on the lookout for candidates. Attend events, not just job fairs. I was speaking, doing the same presentation or version of it at a conference, and I said, your candidates are sitting with you in the room here. And people were just looking at me, really? Yes. You've got to be looking all the time for recruiting. Network. People need to know who you are and what you stand for and about your organization. Remember, out of sight, out of mind. You've got to stand out from the crowd. You've got to differentiate yourself. Another group of people you might want to consider are what we call your past candidates, former employees, boomerang employees. Those are the ones that have left you maybe over a year ago that were good employees, but they left you. Pick up the phone, call them up. Remember about flattery. Find out what they're doing. Stay in touch with them. They may want to come back. They often make excellent candidates. Another group of people you may want to consider are those quality candidates who said no to you. They rejected your offer. But maybe a year or so later, call them back. They may be interested now. And so always have a database of potential people that could make good candidates. Yes, you should do ads. Yes, you should do job boards, not Monster, but the niche ones. Search engine optimization, you'll have the web people talking to you about that can draw people to your website. Pay-per-click ads is a growing way of doing it when you do social media with Facebook and even LinkedIn now. That target individuals that are like you, let them know you're looking. So social media becomes a big part of it. You want to drive candidates to your website. So we're going to talk about website in a minute. It's important you have a strong recruitment website. Again, I talked about niche sites. And if you're going to use outside recruiters, use a niche recruiter, someone who is specifically to your industry segment. Not that they're going to be learning what your industry is. All of a sudden, I do a lot with public power and municipalities, and that's just an area where I do a lot of recruitment. So it's easy for me, easier to find people. So ask yourself, also, as you're looking at options, last year, 2015, what were your top 3 recruitment successes? What were your biggest winners? How did you make this happen? Repeat it. So look at what was successful for you last year and repeat it. Now, the things that didn't work, obviously you're not going to repeat. So take a look at what you've done. Analyze your recruitment to make sure you've done a good job, and where you haven't, fix it. And where you have, build on it. Social recruiting is a big piece of it, and you need an ongoing social media presence. Younger workers, millennials, are going to find you via social media. And so you need to have a presence out there, both on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, are critical pieces. And YouTube is becoming the biggest area for recruitment. So those videos that you have, and they don't have to be the most professional, should also be out there on YouTube. As you know, YouTube is the number 2 search engine for anything behind Google, and of course, Google owns YouTube. So when you are doing recruitment through Twitter, share with your followers what your positions are that you're looking for. Have it regularly. Use hashtags to do that. And so they can find you. Facebook. I'm giving a lot of shout-outs to the Bridge because I think it was yesterday or the day before, one of your ads popped up in front of me on Facebook. So have them out there, and it's got to be an ongoing. It can't be just pop it up once and then hope the applicants start flowing through. It's got to be an ongoing presence without spamming people. So create job tab. Create a job page on Facebook that links to your website so that you can draw people in to you. LinkedIn. Now, LinkedIn also has a thing called LinkedIn Recruiter, where you can, it's a paid page, but it is an effective way. Target candidates, join industry groups on LinkedIn also. Blogs are also helpful for positioning you and reinforcing your brand, positioning you in your organization as experts in what you are doing. So when they think of medical software, they're thinking of your organization. They're thinking of your people. So that'll draw people to you within that particular industry. It's good for business. It's good for recruiting. And so that's one of the other things that you can be doing in there. So your website is a critical piece in there. Make it easy for people to apply online so they don't have to go through the resume process. And don't make it so cumbersome that it is just impossible to get through there. Simplify it. Videos in YouTube, as I said, are critical. That is the direction. Use employee testimonials. Videos allow candidates to get a feel for your place. It allows them to see other employees and say, hey, yeah, I think I could work with those folks. Gives a sense of what the culture of your organization is all about. If you're an organization that likes to have a good time and people are smiling, showing a lot of, silly smiling, those are great things. I had a client who developed a video, and it was it was of a Halloween party, were parts of it, and that was a big piece of a draw. People saying, hey, I'd like to work in a place like that. So employee testimonials are critical, and get them for all of people. It doesn't have to be just, your managers. Talk to your employees on the floor. Put a iPhone in front of them and ask them about how they came to work for you. What is it about your place that makes it attractive there? What are the benefits to them? What's your career like here at this working for you? What's a typical day like? This is what candidates want to know. Develop flyers. This is a flyer I put together for a correctional officers. We call them prison guards. We'll talk about a hard group to recruit, and yet we were very successful in that because of our profile identified who our ideal candidates were. They were military people primarily, and people who were middle-aged, looking for stability, became good candidates for us. Flyers can be left at job fairs, can be left at places where your ideal candidates kind of hang out. They can be put in mailers, whatever, but they are good, and they can be online flyers also. Develop in your toolbox communication templates so that you quickly can develop these things and have them ready when heavy recruitment is coming about. Develop advertisements, whether they're going to be online or monster niche advertising, in advance. Podcasting is another way of doing it. Hearing your voice is an important way of getting that message out. Make sure they're mobile. You want mobile devices because not everybody's using a PC anymore. Candidates want to know what it's like to work for you. They want to feel for who you are. They want to know about your culture and the people that are working there. So, this is LL Bean's. Take a look at just the people there. That's the kind of person who's going to play there. An urban individual, city folk isn't going to fit within LL Bean, but somebody who is into kayaking, hunting, fishing, out in nature, those are the kind of people that are most successful at an LL Bean, and that's the kind of people they're appealing. When you look at their video, when you look at the pictures, when you read about them, that's what they appeal. It reflects their brand, this website. It's easy access to apply, and it's critical to their overall recruitment into yours. Once you've attracted these people in there, you've got to interview them, and it's all about the interview. So you've got to create the right questions, behavioral interviewing questions, ask, listen, probe, listen, situational-based questions so that you can really put people in to find out not what they theoretically would do. You want to know what they have done. Give me specific examples of them. Create scenarios to solve. I just hired an executive director for an association, and out of the profile, we identified the challenges that the individual would be facing over the next 1 to 3 years. We then created scenarios that reflected them, and we gave those scenarios to each of the candidates in advance so they could prepare them, so that when we had them come in for the interview, they knew we were going to ask them about them. We wanted to know how they would attack these particular situations. And you could do that from a clinical standpoint. You could do it from an engineering standpoint. You could do it from anything. So that you understand what a person can do. It's easy for me to say, can you do the job? And, of course, they're going to say yes. It's a lot different for you to say, how would you do it, and how have you done it in the past? Give me an example of it. Train your managers to identify high-potential candidates. Everyone thinks interviewing is easy until you do it. It's not just sitting around. You've got to be able to listen. You've got to be able to ask the right questions, listen, probe, follow up, dive in deep in there. So training of managers, ongoing training is important. And unless you do interviewing all the time, training is critically important. Even if you do it all the time, training is important. Put a lot of eyes on a candidate. I like to see as many people as possible seeing the candidate, even if it's just walking around. Get a sense of that person. Get a feel for them. You want to make sure they don't look like a deer in the headlights. Obviously, you want to interview in different settings. We hired a town manager. We had them walking up and down Main Street talking to residents going into shops. If I was hiring a clinician and they were going to be working the night shift, I'd be interviewing them at night. So you could see how they are going to react to an evening, a weekend, that sort of thing. If they're going to be working in a manufacturing setting, get them out there on the manufacturing floor. See how they react to that. See if they're comfortable in that. See if they've ever been in one. Obviously, you've got to be legal. We're not doing an interviewing workshop here today, but we need to make sure you're asking the right question. So interviewing training is critical, and it's not easy. So work on that. Get them to understand how to do that. Train your managers. I do an awful lot of interviewing training, so if you need some help, let me know. But that's a critical part. The fifth point is don't hire too quickly. Avoid that warm body impulse. I need a body in here, so I'm going to hire. Don't ignore the red flags. I've seen had too many horror stories where the red flags were there. You just didn't feel like they were the right ones, or you heard something and you just said, that won't work. Trust your gut before you act. I had a new client was telling me about a horror story at a law firm, and they hired a candidate, and they fell in love with the candidate because she was a Harvard Law grad, and she did some work with the Court of Appeals. And so they really fell in love with her pedigree, but they kept telling me throughout the whole process, they just felt like she might not fit in here, but having that Harvard Law was just the winner for her. Well, they hired her, and she was wrong. They ignored the red flags. While it's important to be fast in recruiting, particularly now that it's such a competitive environment, don't hire before you're sure. Easy to hire. It's very hard to fire. So don't move too quickly. Always check references. And that's so important to do. And yet people avoid or ignore that. They depend too much on or accept name, rank, and serial number, and therefore throw up their hands. Get strong references and contact information from the candidate. Tell them you want the names of supervisors. Tell them you want the name of their phone numbers. All due respect to all the HR people who are listening today, avoid calling the HR department because all they're going to give you is name, rank, and serial number. Ask your references probing questions. Here's some questions for you. Reference check questions. You can use these. How would you rate the candidate on a 1 to 10 scale? Pretty simple. 10 being the best. What kind of situation would you hesitate to put the candidate in? What kind of situation would give you pause? Provide an example of how a candidate raises the bar for herself and those around her. If you would create a perfect work environment for the candidate, what would it look like? What kind of development plan was communicated to the candidate, and how did they respond? Would you rehire the candidate? Now, to get this information, sometimes people are hesitant about giving it to you. And I'm going to tell you, the higher the rank of the position, if it's the CEO, it's easy to get a reference than it is probably on a janitor. But use reference authorization forms, which allows the individual to give a candid appraisal of the individual without fear that they're going to get sued. Now, it's very rare that somebody ever gets sued if they tell the truth. But people are always fearful of that, and I understand that and respect that, and that's why reference authorization forms are an ideal way to get that information. The seventh step is make a final evaluation. Here's some 10 critical questions, kind of a checklist that you can use to determine if you've got the right candidate. Can he do the job? In your mind, if you feel, can he do the job? Will she be accepted here? Now, be careful about discriminatory issues, but will they fit in? Ask the candidate this question. If I offer you the job, will you accept it? You'd be surprised the answer you get. So you really want to know that well before you offer the job. Is there any reason why you won't accept this job? Are you expecting a counteroffer from your employer? If you get one, what will you do? These are good questions to ask. Is the individual interested in this job? Do they really want this job, or are they going through the motions? What's the likelihood they're going to stay? Are there other things that are going to create problems for them that they're going to turn over? You don't want to hire turnover. Will outside factors interfere with their ability to do the job? The job requires a lot of nights and weekends, but I coach soccer and football, and I'm actively involved in this, that, and the other thing. They're not going to be around. You need to understand that. What are the things that are going to interfere with their performance, their ability to do the job? Are there any red flags out there? Am I excited about this candidate? Is my staff excited about this candidate? Are they one of us? Is she the one? And so you really want to feel very, very positive about the candidate, because if you're not, they're not going to be successful in your organization. And if they're not going to be successful, you've just spent a lot of time, energy, and money on this process. So here's a pop quiz. So answer these questions as you evaluate your recruitment. Are you attracting quality candidates today? Think about the people that are coming through the door, the resumes you're receiving, the referrals you're receiving. Are you satisfied with the interviewing skills of your managers? Are they asking the right questions? Are they properly evaluating the quality of the candidate? Are you getting quality references? And so that's an important question. The references you're getting, are they good? Are they giving you the kind of information you need about the candidate? Are 90% of your job offers accepted? You should measure that to see are they being accepted? Or am I offering a lot of jobs and people are turning me down and just not showing up? Nothing worse than expecting 2 people to be showing up on Monday morning and no one shows and you're all alone. Are you turning over your new hires? Are you eating your young? Are the candidates you hire the same people who show up on day one? I get that all the time. They say, I interviewed this person. They were great. I was so excited about them. And all of a sudden, they came to work, and it was like it was a different person. They didn't perform. They didn't seem they were interested, that sort of thing. That was a bad interview that you had, and that resulted in that situation. So are the candidates you hire the same people that are coming in the door on day one? So critically evaluate the effectiveness of your recruitment program. Where you fall short, fix it. Where you've had successes, repeat it. And that's why I asked you those questions about 2015, about what were your successes. Take a look at them, what worked. Now let's do some final points before we wrap up. I strongly suggest you implement these 7 principles that I've outlined both in my book and on right here in this webinar. Implementing these 7 principles will positively impact the organization or anything else. In all the times that I have put in place these kinds of programs for my clients, I have seen remarkable and fast turnaround in their ability to recruit and retain a big part of it, candidates, employees. So put in those places. Focus on hiring stars only. You know my book, Uncomplicating Management, says focus on your stars and your company will soar. Focus on stars only. You only want to hire the best. It's hard, but don't settle. Every hire brings you one step closer to success or, unfortunately, to failure. So be unequivocal in your search process. Those are the things you want to do. So your action plan after you leave this session today is to evaluate your current recruitment efforts. How am I doing? What's working? What's not? Put in place a plan for a comprehensive recruitment plan made up of those 7 principles. So take it out, map it out, use your project management skills. Make sure your recruitment brand is linked with your company brand. They should be almost identical. Put in place a recruitment toolbox so that it has everything in there from employee testimonials to flyers to an upgrade of your website. All of those sort of things should be in place. Train your managers on interviewing techniques. Educate your managers and staff around the issue of what kind of people we're looking for. Develop a referral program in there. Measure the progress that you're making in your recruitment in there. And contact me. I can help you, and I'd be more than happy to help you with my contact information you have. So put this plan in place. The market out there is hot, and it's getting hotter. Employers are competing for quality candidates, and they're poaching also. So you need a comprehensive program to be successful in there. Just a little bit about what I can do to help you. I do an awful lot of executive recruitment, and more than happy to help you with that process and talk to you about that. Or I can develop this recruitment program, which we've just talked about today, and more than happy to give you some pointers on doing that. Some of you have already asked me about interviewing skills training. I do a tremendous amount about that, and many of you are on part of my helpline, which is an advisory service, so you can pick up the phone at any time and call me with questions of whether it's about recruitment or any other kind of employee issue. And that's my contact information. So these are some of the services I provide, and as I said, give me a call. So I'm going to end it here. If you have questions, feel free to give me a call. I'd be more than happy to help you there. And I hope I'll be able to provide you the information you wanted. But again, if you have any questions about the presentation that I just had, feel free to give me a call, send me an email. And this concludes our session for today. I will be back to you with upcoming sessions very soon. Thank you very much. And at this point, I'm going to close. Bye-bye now.